Ndinibulisa nonke emakhaya. Ndim uLufefe waseMotoza TV, South Africa's leading Formula One fan channel. I did say in my stories earlier this week that the Brazilian Grand Prix is the most exciting on the racing calendar. The race is only today and we've already had so much drama. So, before we get into the happenings of the sprint race last evening, I just want us to talk about the penalty given to Lewis Hamilton, the grid penalty where he was disqualified from the sprint qualifying, which was on Friday, which ended up making him have to start in last place yesterday. Before we talk about the race, I just want to talk about the penalty itself and why it was imposed. I've done a few sketches here. My drawing skills are nowhere near my presenting skills. So anyway, I don't know if you guys can see. Can you? Yes. So that's Lewis's car. So this is the rear wing. On an ordinary car, I think you would call it spoiler, ne? So it's this part. As you can see, that's the front of the car. That's the halo. There's the Mercedes logo, car number 44 and Petronas. So this is the rear wing, and this is the flap that opens up when they activate DRS. Now DRS is the drag reduction system, which is used in two scenarios during a Formula One race weekend. The first one is during the race, when you are within 1 second of the car that you're following, you can activate it at 2 points. Usually a circuit will have 2 long straights on the start-finish line and then on the back straight. So in Brazil, there are 2 DRS zones. Then the second scenario is during qualifying. Excuse me. You can use DRS on the same 2 straights. So basically, what happened is Lewis's rear wing was found that when it opens up in DRS on the one side, it opens up more than the regulated distance of 85 millimeters. So when it's closed, the rear wing, let me just show you on my sketch. I hope you guys can see. I did it in isometric view so that you can see. Maybe let me move this away from the sun a bit. Ooh, sorry. Yes, so this is the rear wing itself. As you can see, this is 85 millimeters. So that's the opening flap of the DRS when the DRS has been activated. So they use a machine, it's a handheld machine that is 85 millimeters in, is it radius? No. Circumference? Well, whatever, but it's 85 millimeters round. So this is it that I'm indicating it here. So when you put it in, it's not supposed to go through to the other side. So when they inspected Lewis's car after sprint quali on Friday night, they found that it was fine on the left-hand side. The machine didn't go through this side and it didn't go through this side. But then on the right-hand side, let me just bring it closer, it went through, and apparently it was 0.2 millimeters on the one side. So the stewards then handed a penalty to Lewis Hamilton, where he had to start at the back of the grid after qualifying on pole position for yesterday's sprint race. This obviously became a big disadvantage for the Brit because he had to work his way through the field. When I first heard about the penalty, which was about 90 minutes before yesterday's sprint race, I was really disgruntled, to be honest, because I was like, wow, how can he just get such a harsh penalty? And Max Verstappen, who inspected at Park Ferme, Lewis's car, where he actually touched the rear wing, this part, let's go back here. So he actually touched the rear wing, but then he has now come out and said that they've had their suspicions about Mercedes, that there's something untoward that they're doing to get the advantage on the straight line speed, because They were over 27 kilometers per hour quicker than the McLaren even, when Lewis made the pass on Lando Norris yesterday. So Max got there after the sprint quali on Friday. He touched the rear wing on the Mercedes, which is not allowed, if I have to add that. And after doing that, let me just have a sip of water. He was fined 50,000 euros for the offense, while Lewis, who already has a 5 grid place penalty for today's race because he's changed the internal combustion element of his engine in his power unit. So I'm just going to explain that a bit. So throughout the season, all teams are given 3 engines to use through the season. Once you start changing elements within the power unit itself, the engine is called a power unit in F1, then you start to incur penalties. So if you remember, about 4 or 5 races ago, he already took another 5 grid place penalty because he had changed into the 4th internal combustion engine. So this is his 5th. So they then, as a team, decided that they would take the penalty. Let me just show Team Mercedes. So they then decided that they would take the penalty at the Brazilian Grand Prix because it's an open track with long straights, high-speed corners, and it's easier to overtake. So they figured that they could make their way up the grid in today's race, and this was the best race to then take the penalty, which will give them a fresh engine for the remainder of the season. There's 4 races left, including today's Grand Prix. But then back to the decision by the stewards. I heard Toto Wolff in an interview after the sprint race yesterday, and he was livid because I didn't want to be like, I'm getting into politics or anything. And if you heard on the radio immediately after Lewis had come 5th, because Lewis actually made his way from 20th place to 5th place in 24 laps in the sprint race, because the sprint race, which is the 3rd time we're seeing it this year. The first one was in Great Britain, next one was in Italy, Monza, I think, and this is the 3rd one. So basically it's a different format of qualifying for today's race that they've trying to introduce. So they did it at 3 venues this year, and next year they will increase it to 6 venues, whereby they will have a practice session on a Friday morning, then they'll have Quali for the sprint race, which is on Saturday, then they'll have P2 on Saturday morning to just get their race set up correct, which Fernando Alonso topped yesterday in the Alpine. Congratulations to him. So anyway, it's a different format that they've done at these 3 Grand Prix that I've mentioned, from the generic where they do 2 practice sessions on Friday, a 3rd practice session on Saturday morning, and then the qualifying on Sunday. So how it then works is the results from the sprint race, which is qualified for on Friday in place of FP2, will then determine the grid for today's Grand Prix. So because Valtteri Bottas won yesterday's sprint race, he will start in front today. Congratulations to him. He's really helping Mercedes try to retain the Constructors' Championship, because they actually award 3 points for the sprint race, for 1st place, 2 to 2nd place, and 1 to 3rd place. So it was Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen finished 2nd, so he gets 2 points and extends his lead in the championship from Lewis. Sorry, sometimes from Lewis Hamilton, who only finished 5th, so doesn't score any points, because the last point goes to 3rd place, which was Carlos Sainz Jr. in the Ferrari. I'm really impressed with Carlos Sainz Jr. It's his 1st year at Ferrari. He started off very slow and then sort of caught up to Charles Leclerc, who I rate very, very highly. In my opinion, he's in the same level as Max Verstappen in terms of driver ability. That's Charles Leclerc, but I think Carlos Sainz Jr. is there or thereabout. So anyway, stewards gave him the penalty. I think it was a bit harsh. Max only got a fine, 50,000 euros, when they asked him, so is it going to dent your pocket? He was like, I think I'll be all right, because you know these boys are making big bucks in it. So anyway, Lewis wasn't deterred by the penalty. He just got into the zone and made his way up the field. So with the 5 grid place penalty that he had going into the race weekend for the engine change, he then was always going to start 5 places behind where he qualified. Qualified as in where he finished the sprint race. So he finished 5th place, which means today he'll be starting in 10th place. I don't think it's bad if you look at the speed advantage Mercedes seem to have. I think this is the strongest that their package has been the whole season at the Brazilian Grand Prix, and they will have the fresh engine on Lewis's car at least for the remainder of the season. Even Valtteri Bottas 2 Grand Prix ago changed his internal combustion engine, so Mercedes are straight up favorites for this Grand Prix. So I just wanted to analyze that, and my opinion on the matter, I think the stewards were harsh on Lewis but light on Max. 50,000 euros, it's a lot of money to you and me, but to those guys, it's like a 5 tiger. But anyway, it is what it is. We move. Get in there, Lewis. Oh, shucks, sorry. Let me do a separate video for this, actually. I'm gonna post just now.